back. Welcome back. This is Rod Powell, and you are tuning in to the You Should Get a License podcast, your number one source, not the number two, but the number one source for information, education, and inspiration on the most underrated industry and business today. And let me tell you why I'm emphasizing that this is the number one source. Because today, wherever you are in the hemisphere of this globe listening to this, you're about to go to a master class. We're about to go to school and learn from one of the best. If I gave you all the letters that are behind his name, it would take the entire conversation just to go through every single one of the designations that he has. I'll tell you, one of our industry's true trailblazers. He is a founder of an agency, which now is a division of a much larger institution. So when we talk about there's levels, there's definitely levels. And I know I'm building it up and building the anticipation because this is going to be something special tonight, ladies and gentlemen. This is a special one. He is the first African-American to be inducted into the American College Alumni Hall of Fame. He's a charter member of Quad A, if you're in the financial services side of the business, which is the African American Association of Financial Advisors. He is a recipient of the Lane Dixon Leadership Award. He's a former board member of the National African American Insurance Association. He has been featured on BET. He's been featured in numerous industry magazines. He's a member of many different organizations that work towards the betterment of this industry. Once again, a true giant in our space, all the way from Oklahoma, but now in the East Coast, Mr. Lee Bethel. Lee, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Rod. Thank you so much. I'll have you be my wingman.
Whenever you're accepting your next award, if you need somebody to bring you up, I'm your guy. Hey, but in all seriousness, I just wanted to say, I said it before we started recording, but thank you for taking this time. I do 100% want to give you your flowers and just let you know that without you and the things that you've accomplished, there would be no space for me and individuals like me in this industry. So I just want to let you know right now that I absolutely appreciate what you've done, and having the opportunity to tell you face to face on Zoom. It just means a lot to do that.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And he's a musician, which we're gonna talk about that too. That was a different part of our conversation when we met. So, Lee, I want to kind of start with your area of focus. On this particular platform, we talk about different aspects of this industry. Obviously, there's a lot of different lanes and places that people can go. As a professional with Comprehensive Benefit Services, a division of Hub, what do you focus on a day-to-day basis? What area of the insurance and financial industry do you work inside of?
I guess I have to give you a little bit of background on how I got to this point to answer that question. And one of the things that when I was starting out in the business, as most of us did, we worked with, families and couples, and we did night work. All our work was done basically between 6 and 9 in the evening. You might actually be able to see 2 people possibly. And I wanted to do something different. I wanted to work during the day. And a lot of the clients that I had at that time were not the business owner. So you couldn't see them during the day. So I decided to start working with the businesses, and that led me going into the benefits business, because the benefits business was something that everybody that had health insurance for their company was receptive to talking about, because they would want to hopefully reduce those costs or find a way to make their plan more attractive for their employees so that their key people stay. And if they're recruiting, they would be able to recruit high quality talent because they had a really good benefit package. So I went from seeing people from 6 to 9 to seeing them from 8 to 5.
Right.
so I could see a whole lot more people.
That's right.
So,
And got your weekends back too, probably. Yeah.
for the most part.
For the most part.
And so that's kind of how that got started. So when I moved to, oh, there's a whole lot. I know we'll probably get to it and it'll come back around, but I moved to the Washington, D.C. area in 1987,
Mhm.
seven. And this was not necessarily a brand new market, but one where I was trying to get established. And there were a lot of Black companies here and there were not a lot of Blacks who were doing benefits. So it kind of was a void. I said, maybe we need to try to fill this void. So we started learning the benefits business from ground zero, because at that time I was still doing pretty much personal insurance.
Right.
From there, we went into 401ks. This is another evolution because that then required a securities license. And if we get to that, we can talk about that too and how all that came about. But that's kind of how comprehensive benefit services got started, was to fill the void here in the DC area where there were not a lot of Blacks who specialized in benefits. There were folks who had plans or had clients, but that might not have been their specialty.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say to this day, there still aren't
Not
a
a
lot.
lot of us.
Right. On
I'm
the
still a unicorn a lot of places where I
yeah,
go.
absolutely. Especially, for the types of groups that you're working with. Um, I do want to get into kind of the evolution of your career, kind of starting
Mhm.
in the individual market and, kind of branching out into benefits and, kind of what sparked that and how did you begin the process of growing it. But first, I want to kind of take a step back
Okay.
because you're from Oklahoma. Now, when you moved to DC, you were moving from Atlanta or Oklahoma City?
Philadelphia. Yeah,
Philadelphia.
I got a
Okay.
little
So
path there going on.
we're Oklahoma to
To
Atlanta
Atlanta, to
to
Philly,
Philadelphia
to
to
DC.
DC.
Yes.
Let's go back to Oklahoma first. Let's start
Okay.
there.
All right.
Take me back, 9, 10-year-old Lee Bethel. What were you dreaming about being when you grew up?
Being an orthodontist.
Mm, an orthodontist.
Yep.
Wow.
That was why when I went to school at Morehouse, I have a BS in biology, and I had braces when I was growing up, and I'm like, ooh, this man makes a lot of money. I think I want to do that. And at that time, there were not a lot of Black orthodontists, so
Mm,
that was kind of how that got started. Um, so that was my thought, if you will. So
yes.
when I went to Morehouse, as I said, I was a biology major. And while at Morehouse, I found that I needed to find a job during the summertime. So I ended up, there was an ad somewhere, someplace, you know how they put these ads up for summer work and come make $3,000 during the summer. Excuse me.
Hey,
I
right.
think I'd like to do that. So I went to the meeting and ended up working with the Southwestern company out of Nashville, Tennessee. And Southwestern was a company that, and to this day still may, I think they still do, work with college students. It's a little hazardous knocking doors now than it was back when I
Mm,
started. So I don't know if I'd knock doors right now today, but nonetheless, I went out and started working with the Southwestern company the summer after freshman year of college at Morehouse. Things went very well. I made the $3,000. I'm like, this is doing okay, kind of
yeah.
like
What year is
this.
this?
This was the summer of 75.
$3,070. Wow.
Yeah. So
You're doing good.
I basically paid for school
Yeah.
selling books during the summertime. So that was because I graduated with no debt.
Wow.
And at what that enabled me to do was to learn some basic things, because when you knock doors, Rod, you see the world.
Yeah.
And I started out my first summer, I was in Dallas, Texas. The next summer, I was outside of Miami, Florida. From there, I went to Greenville, Mississippi. And then the following summer, I ended up being on the East Coast between Baltimore and Philly. So that was a whole nother story in itself. I probably
Wow.
knocked 25,000 doors in those 4 summers.
You know
And you,
what? I have you. I think that company still exists
Yeah, they're still in outside of
because
Nashville. I just don't know how they're doing
there's a
I don't
young
know if
man.
they're knocking doors now or exactly, but
Yes, they are
I had a
knocking doors.
okay.
They are knocking doors because there was a young man who came to our house
Hmm.
2 years ago. Haven't seen him since, but we still have see him on Facebook. And every summer he's
Right.
something different, different city.
Okay. Right.
But came to our house and sold us like $400 in books.
Yes. That was me. Had to be quick on your feet. The door opens
Came in,
up
he
and
asked
it's
for
like
snacks.
you got about 10 seconds.
Yeah,
Are you
he was
going to
asking
be
for
able to get
cookies.
in or
You
give him a
know,
demo at the door?
sure enough, did yeah. Okay, I'm sorry.
So that
Wow. Okay.
what that precipitated, however, and I'm sure that we'll get to this in a little more in depth, but my uncle was the second Black agent hired by New York Life. And
Mm.
as I was going through this process of the sales piece, he was asking, "What are you doing in the summertime?" Of course, talking to your uncle and your mother's brother. I mean, you're going to have conversation. So he's like, maybe we should talk about you looking at coming into the insurance business. So, I was like, well, I'm going to be an orthodontist. So, we can toss that all around. But needless to say, he was a very good salesperson. And by the time I graduated from Morehouse, I was joining him in his practice in Philadelphia.
Wow.
And that's kind of how that worked. And I asked, well, do I need to change my major? And he said, nope, don't need to do anything. You're knocking doors. That's all you need. You're good. So
Yeah, you got the foundation.
that was the foundation, and that was the things needed to what you had to do to be successful. Because we knocked doors from 8 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night till it got
Wow.
dark every
Wow.
day except Sunday.
Different age now.
Yeah, we went to a
Come in the
city
book.
ride. You found a place to stay. They taught
Yeah.
us how to go to places, and you go somewhere and you got to stay somewhere for a summer because we weren't moving from city to city. We stayed in where we were working the entire
Right.
summer. So you had to find places to stay. So they taught us how to find places to stay. They had a whole program of what do you do when you go to Dallas, Texas, don't know a soul and need to find a place to stay, and you need a place to stay in about 48 hours.
Yo, this kid was like, I'm staying with a family up the street or something. It
Right,
was
right, exactly. Yep,
shout
that's
out to
exactly
Adrian,
us.
man. It's wherever he is, he was
That was it. That
yeah.
was definitely it. And we got it. We're our own little fraternity.
Wow. That definitely conditions you
Yes.
for certain. So you still go back to school, finish
Yes.
up,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
then you come back,
Got my degree, got my BS in biology.
you
And
go
then
from
I
books.
moved to that, and so the story gets a little more interesting here.
Okay.
So I did my money summer, if you will. That's what they called it, the summer after you graduate. Okay. So I did my money summer, finished that, and then I went back home for the fall. This was in the fall of 78, fall of 78. And so I was there, and I was my plan, or the plan was that I was to move to Philly in January of 1979, which is exactly 45 years ago. And so everything was moving along fine. In December of 78, my uncle had a heart attack and died.
Mm.
So we never actually had the opportunity to work together. At the time, he was also one of the leading agents in New York Life. Had over 3,000 clients up and down the East Coast. So a very, professional type of practice. He worked with physicians and attorneys and had more of a business type of clientele, but still wasn't in personal insurance practice. It was not a benefits practice, not a retirement practice, and we didn't do securities way back then. Okay, we could barely sell insurance, so we didn't really have I'm sure there were some people out there, but we weren't really selling securities at that time.
Wow.
So things changed and evolved because we went from insurance to the financial services, and that was the add when the securities piece came in and the planning and all of those other things came in as a result of that. But Rod, I go back to carrying a rate book. Okay.
Wow.
No computers, no illustrations, none of that. A rate book.
Great book.
Rate book. And or
And
we
paper
had
apps.
a 3-ring binder. We called it Live Die Quit. and we pull up, you look for $75,000 of insurance, you turn to the $75,000 page, and there are your rates.
Wow. All the ages.
All the ages. Yep. Right there. And you had your talk, your kitchen table talk, you're talking to the family and go through all of that. So I mentioned that about my uncle because that was something that then it's like, should I still go to Philly? And I had nothing else lined up. That was all I had in place. I didn't do any internships or trying to find anything else. He said, "Hey, you're good. We're going to work together. I'll show you the business." I'm like, "Fine, sounds good to me." But he died. So I looked at Philly as going to someplace I went in the summer. Let me go move to Philly. Now I moved in with my aunt. She needed somebody in the house, help out and all that kind of stuff. So that was fine. It was easy. Didn't have to really work hard to find a place to stay.
Right.
And then ultimately she came into the business also, which is a whole nother story. But so January of 1979, I started with New York Life. And that's how I got to Philly from Atlanta. Well, by way of Oklahoma City.
Wow. Okay. Started with me. Now, your uncle, what was your uncle's name?
His name was Ted Tillman.
Ted Tillman. Shout out to Ted Tillman. The second. He was the second
Yes.
black agent with New York Life. Cirillo
Yes. McSween was the first.
McSween was the first. Right.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow. So you still win anyway.
Yes.
All right.
It's like, hey, I've been going all these places in the summertime. Let me because I'd visited Philly as going to visit.
Yeah.
I'd never really lived in Philly. So living in Philly is a whole different experience than visiting.
Yes.
Trust me.
I'm sure. I visited. I never lived
Learning
there.
about North Philly and South Philly. It's like, ooh, I'm glad I grew up in Oklahoma.
Quite different than Oklahoma, I'm sure.
Much different. It was, row houses was like a thing. What is this? Why are these houses all connected?
Yeah. So you
anyway.
you basically start there kind of on your own. Like
Yep.
what is it like? Like what do you do? What's happening?
Same, start training. I had already done my licensing tests and all that. So all that was out of the way. So I didn't have to do that. But then it was, okay, dialing for dollars, get on the phone every night, mortgage leads, new baby leads, all of the things that you typically do when you're first getting started in the insurance business. And I did not have a referral base in Philadelphia because I wasn't from there.
Wow. How many calls were you making each evening, and what was it kind of the time frame did you spend?
I don't want to know if it was 100. It probably was 6 to 9.
Okay.
And you were trying to fill a week, so you didn't call every night. You called usually on Mondays.
Okay.
And hopefully filling your week up, so at least you had 3 to 5 appointments during the week. Trying to get set up for that. So just as if you were knocking on somebody's door and they come to the door and you got about 10 seconds.
Yeah, right.
Make plead your case. Same thing on the phone.
Wow. Make that
Somebody answer the phone and, oh, Mr. Johnson, I understand that you recently purchased your home. Congratulations. My name is Lee Bethel. Just start on your little thing, try to find some way to encourage that person to continue to talk to you.
Wow.
Unlike we do today when we get the calls that we get now, and it's all the people who call you now and you just hang up. Okay. Right. So at least at that time, because that was not prevalent, you at least could usually get somebody that listened for a few minutes or seconds at least to see if there was some benefit in talking to you and setting a time to talk to you, because you were selling, if you will, the appointment, not what your product was. You weren't trying to sell that on the phone. You were just trying to sell the opportunity to have half an hour, 45 minutes to talk with you about how to protect your home in the event of your premature death, or how to provide for your family in the event of your premature death. And that was pretty much the talk at that time.
What you just said right there is a kind of a critical rule in like sales processes. We used to call it not spilling our candy in the lobby. You're trying to get the appointment on that contact. You're not talking about any type of product or solution.
No.
I just want to see if we can get some time on the calendar.
Exactly.
Together. And then when you get to that appointment, that's when another sales cycle begins. A product,
developing the trust, building helping the individual know that you are able to assist them. Because at the time I'm doing all this, I'm 22 years old. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you're talking to folks who, as in today, if you were graduating from school and talking to your classmates about financial planning, if it will, let's just say things have evolved a little bit, they don't have any money.
Right.
They got debt. They got a bunch of
Right.
student loan
It's
debt.
real. That's
So
true.
maybe they got a job at 60K. Maybe somebody lucked out and got 100. Okay, but they don't have $200,000 of assets set aside.
Right.
So they're still learning. So they're not the people who are going to literally fund you because they don't have any money yet.
You don't have
So
it.
you need to elevate your practice and move to those who are doing a little bit better. So now you're talking to people who might be your parents' age. Uh-oh,
Yeah.
watch out now. So what are you bringing to the table as a 22-year-old to
Yeah.
somebody who's 55 or 60? And how are you able to show them that you are competent at what you do because you've been licensed and
Yep.
you are, let's say you're taking some specialized courses in this so that I can be of much more service to you, Mr. Powell. And it's my job to hopefully guide you to the results that you're looking for your family. So tell,
Absolutely.
and then you just kind of have to kind of flow. But when you've knocked doors, you dance on your feet pretty quick.
Yeah. No, I mean
You have to.
you came in with a different, like I said, different kind of conditioning.
Right.
It's almost like someone training for MMA fight. It's like you can't just walk in there and think you're gonna
Right.
get in there and
Exactly.
grapple somebody,
Right. 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 Right.
you prepared in advance.
Yes.
What kind of normally I ask for like guidance kind of at the end, but I'll ask for it, got it throughout too. But like for somebody who is young, let's say they're graduating college, they're in that
Mhm.
situation because
Right.
that happens now, like a young
Right.
person will get out
Mhm.
of school, they might meet with a New York life, they get
Mhm.
started and they're like, man, how am I supposed to get respect from, or how am I
No,
supposed to get someone who's
exactly.
older to take me seriously?
Right.
You know?
So that is where education comes into play. And in my opinion, is that you have to be a student of what it is that you do. And I typically will use the analogy when I'm asked this, in previously, is if you're having surgery done and you find you've got this doctor who's been to med school, so they've been to undergrad, so they come out, they gone to med school another 4 years, so now they're 26, they
Yeah.
do their residency, they do their internship, and now maybe they end up board certified and they're in their early 30s, by the time, maybe somewhere right around that time when all this takes place, but now they're board certified in what it is that they do. So most folks don't ask you, well, if they know that you're board certified, I'll just leave it there without you detouring into
Right.
some other things. They don't usually ask you how old you are.
Right. Yeah. If
You
they know
know,
the criteria, they
then
know your qualifications.
exactly. So you could be a 33-year-old board certified neurosurgeon operating on a 60-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
the other
the
thing.
scenario is very similar, but
Yes.
you have to pay your dues with your education. So you have to be able to ask the appropriate questions. You have to understand what it is and how do you talk to someone who is older than you, if you will, and old enough in some cases to be a parent, but be able to show them that you're competent at what it is that you do. And I would say things like, well, I'm currently in this Chartered Life Underwriter program. And are you familiar with that program, Mr. Powell?
Right.
And they'll say no.
Yeah. They're gonna be like, no.
Because more than likely the other person who they've talked to or dealing with doesn't have a CLU.
Yeah.
So then you tell them what a CLU does. And this is what I'm trained, this is what I'm learning to do, and this is how I'm doing it. And this is why I think that the things that we're talking about, I can be a benefit to you and your family. So you kind of move down that line. And then I you mentioned some things earlier about the designations, and you mentioned Lang Dixon. So I know we're going all over the place, but it'll circle
This is good.
around. So
Yes.
um, I do have to mention that after 3 years in Philadelphia, it looked like this wasn't going to be my career. Okay. Things
Really?
weren't things weren't going like I thought they needed to go. And being in Philadelphia, I decided that I was going to move back to Oklahoma, and I was going to open up a chain of cheesesteak restaurants because they didn't
Yes.
have cheesesteaks in Oklahoma. Okay, but they got a
Right.
lot of beef, but they didn't
Right,
have
right, right.
cheesesteak.
But Philly, hey, you got cheesesteaks.
Exactly. So it was
Like,
not
hey,
hard to figure out that having a cheesesteak restaurant could be very lucrative in a
right.
city like Oklahoma City, where you got all the beef you can imagine.
It's a great idea.
Stockyards right there, and I was just going to go up there and open up a chain of cheesesteaks. So prior to me doing that, and I am going somewhere with all of this. So I told my aunt, I said, Aunt Betty, I'm getting ready. I think this is basically it. It's just not panning out the way it needed to pan out, etc. So she said, well, you probably need to talk with Lang Dixon. And I was like,
Mm,
and I had met Lang. And the reason I had met Lang is that Lang's market was very similar. He was black and very similar to my uncle's. And he had moved to the Philadelphia area from Wisconsin. And so he had been calling on the doctors and the attorneys and all of that in Philadelphia. And they all told him that they worked with Ted Tillman, but they all knew that Ted Tillman was deceased and that his wife had come in the business. So he decided, maybe I should go meet his wife. And that's kind of how she met him. And then I met him through her as a result, because it's kind of hard when you're living in the house and all that, and you meet people you're going to see. And so we knew each other, but I had not really talked with him about a career or anything like that. So she said, why don't you talk with him before you make your final decision? I was like, okay, no problem. So Lang and I met, and I had been walking around in the tunnel with no light. Okay, bumping my head against the wall trying to make this thing work. And he was able to turn the light on. So I was like, because I enjoyed the business. It's just that I needed some additional guidance and direction. And again, when you have the mentoring type of relationship, which will maybe circle back when you were talking about having someone who is now coming out of school or learning something now, having a mentor, how important that is. My whole career, Rod, is being the benefactor of a mentor by the name of Lang Dixon.
wow.
So without him, because I didn't have my uncle. My uncle died. Okay, he's gone. So I didn't have the ability to work with him, and he'd been with New York Life 20 something years at that time. Actually, almost 20. Yeah, it was 20 years, 20 plus years with New York Life. He started in 57 and he died in 78. So yeah, a little over 20 years. He had finally made what they call senior NILIC at New York Life. And that is when you're eligible now for a pension as a New York Life agent. So he had just made that. I had the opportunity to go to his luncheon and meet other folks. And I was the heir apparent, that whole thing going on.
Right,
So, but
right, right.
anyway, let me not,
Wow.
let me stop. So let me let you ask some more questions.
No, no, no. I want to ask a little bit more about Lang Dixon and that
Sure.
relationship because, well, first you said he turned the light on for you. Was there
Yes.
something he said to you, like what nugget? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you guys spent time and had
Right.
conversations,
Right.
but what was kind of the thing that he instilled that made you say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to keep going on this road. I'm going to give this another go."
So Lang was a technician of the insurance business. He was the first person that I knew of that carried a computer. And at the time, they would do insurance illustrations. And that was so cool because we were all using rate books. And he had this little computer in a briefcase, and it would print an illustration. And it was very archaic back in the day now, nothing like anything that you would see now. And he was very, very technical, very student, understood cash value, understood the differences between the types of products and how important that information was when you're talking to your clients. So, and then he was really big on education. And he said, well, I really want you to get your CLU, et cetera, so on and so forth. Here's what we can do. I need somebody to help me do my plans. And he was doing estate planning at the time. And it was not full-fledged financial planning because it was very narrow because we were really doing estate planning and insurance planning. So a little retirement, but not a whole lot. So, but there was things that needed to be done. There were reports. He had these reports that he would provide to his clients. And I became the in-house tech. And so, and as a result of that, he would add me to the cases. So think about this now is you're bringing someone on and now you're giving up 25% of your case to this person who is doing this work because I wasn't on salary.
Not a
That
bad deal.
was my salary.
Not a
Okay.
bad deal.
So that's kind of how things happened. And if you know anything about the $1 million roundtable, I had never made the $1 million roundtable in the 3 years that I was stumbling around, hitting my head against the wall. And the year after I joined Lang, I made $1 million roundtable on 25% of a kid's business.
Wow.
So that then give you an idea of what you learn in the so I was learning, I was writing, doing his estate plans. He gave me the format. Here's how we do this. I ran the illustrations, I set up the physicals, I did all of that. And then started developing my own clientele after a period of time. So that's kind of how things started progressing, is that I started then moving more into doing my own appointments rather than, doing the work behind the scenes. And then in many cases, I also would accompany him on his calls.
Yeah.
So then I got to see him function in a sales situation, if you will, or if you, I guess I don't call it sales, but I guess it was sales back then. It's a
It
little
was
different now.
right. I
It was
hear, I
sales.
mean, we hear Lang Dixon's name. Well, I hear it a lot amongst, kind of I'll say the innovators, in the industry. Yourself, Gerald Tillman, Kathy Conley
Mhm,
Jones. I hear the name.
mhm,
I hear his name always mentioned,
mhm,
but I
mhm.
can't always find a lot of information about him.
Well, I have a lot of information.
I would love yeah. I would love that. So like what is it? And obviously, there's an award that's named after him and such, but
Right.
what was it about Lane Dixon that made him so special to the industry?
I would say the who he was as a person, first of all, and the knowledge that he had, and his focus on education, and how
Mhm.
important that was, and being sincere. I guess that would probably be the things. I mean, he was a mentor. He was a friend. He was a teacher to me. I mean, Rod, we spent a lot of time. I mean, at one point, my uncle also had a practice here in DC, which part of the reasons why I ended up down here. So my uncle was commuting between Philly and DC. So as Lang was working with my aunt, we all ended up coming down to DC. Okay.
Gotcha.
So then it was developing the practice down here. We ultimately opened an office here. And when I moved down here, because I really reached a point where I was not doing as much on the inside for him because I had finally started my own practice, and I was working with a lot of the Morehouse graduates down here in the Washington area, and discovered the market here was a little bit different than Philly. Imagine that.
Wow.
uh, Federal government versus
Yeah.
industrial.
Yeah.
A little bit more different kind of market. And
Yeah.
so I decided, well, I'm thinking 2 weeks out of the month I'm in DC. And then when I come back to Philly, all I'm doing is the work to go back to DC. It was time to move. So
I just want to say, Lee, your segues are on point because my question was, how'd you end up getting to DC? That's what I was going to ask. So
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 we
so
had an office here, and yeah,
uh,
when we first started coming down here, Lang and I, we used to we had a client, and they had there was a physician client that was down here, and we would sleep on the floor of his office when we came
wow,
down here. Yeah,
wow.
I can go back to that.
So every 2 weeks, so you start working with you work with Lane Dixon. You kind of
Yes,
kind of building your chops in the industry,
right.
where you're learning more. At this time, are you also pursuing more designations during this period as well, or?
Yeah, yes, it started with CLU, and then it kind of started progressing. I think around that time it was um oh CLU was what? Um 87.
Wow.
So I got CLU in 87. So about that time I had to look at the thing. I said I couldn't remember the year, so I guess I should. I remember it now. And we started having to do CE.
Mhm.
Okay. And you could go to these classes or you could get a designation. I'm like, education is important. Why don't I get some designations? So I would start taking the classes. So I took the CLU. I then took the Chartered Financial Consultant. I was doing benefits, registered employee benefits consultant, doing health insurance, registered health underwriter, so on and so forth. So currently, I think I'm at 10 professional designations,
Yeah, you
something like
listen.
that.
I go RABC. That's I can
Yes.
go.
I was the RABC when it was at the American College, and
Oh
now
wow.
it's with the National Association of Benefits and Insurance Professionals,
Yes,
or
yes.
NABIP,
The newly
which
crowned
is
Navy.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
No, that's amazing. That is amazing. So, starting that practice in DC, you said, "Hey, I noticed that there's a different clientele here." When did you decide to say, "Hey, I'm going to make this permanent," and then start to? I mean, is comprehensive benefit services already launched at this point, or you say, "Hey, I'm going to set this shop up"?
Oh no, we were not launched. We were still Lang Dixon and Associates, the Dixon Group. We were
Okay,
Dixon Group,
Dixon.
and then in let's see, I moved here in '87, so we started CBS in spring of '88.
88. Got you.
Mhm,
Got you. Got
mhm.
you. So what was that? What was that catalyst? Like, what was the turning point there to say, "Hey, now it's time for me to really show everything that I can offer into this
Just
market"?
to have that focus in benefits,
The
because
benefit.
Lang's practice was individual. He didn't do
Got you.
anything with benefits, and he was not securities licensed.
Got you.
So at that time, now we're 88 from 79. So what, 9 years in, the industry has started changing because now there was more emphasis on planning. There was more emphasis on securities and having a securities license. But at the time, I did not actually have a securities license. So there was a gentleman here who happens to be my office mate that I started referring because I was coming to DC in the early 80s, and I started referring my securities business to him because I didn't have a license.
Mm,
So we ended up sharing, we've been sharing space literally since 1987.
wow.
So that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Right. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long.
Yeah,
That's a long.
that's so it was kind of like, if I'm gonna learn the securities business, I'd have learned it from the person I've been referred to. So duh.
Right. 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 Wow. And this is a time you said this is late '80s, so this is a time
Yeah.
where like kind of the variable products are starting to
Yep,
get
yep. All
really
that was
popular.
coming into play. So,
Yeah.
and then I got a chance to see all of that evolve, and then see the end result on the back end at the same time. Because
Yeah.
now, when new products come out, I'm not as quick to rush
Hmm.
because sometimes they don't have the longevity that's necessary, or there's some characteristics that they'll have that you don't know that they will have until the end of them, or something, or they've been in place for 15 or 20 years, and it looks great on the front end. Like there was a concept that we used to do that was called, I can keep it simple. It would be um, buying permanent insurance with a term rider. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'll just keep it simple to that. And to get the price down.
Yeah.
So if you want $100,000 policy, you buy a $20,000 whole life with an $80,000 term rider.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you can get $100,000 of insurance for the price of 20.
Yeah.
Okay. And the dividends on the whole life contract would pay the premiums on the term, as long as the dividends held up.
As long as the dividends add up,
They didn't tell you that
right?
on the front end because nobody ever thought that dividend rates would go down.
Mm.
So over a period of time, and I still have some of these policies on the books, they now have an additional premium that you have to pay if you're going to keep the term, because the dividend is not sufficient to
Not
pay the
funding it.
cost exactly.
Yeah.
But you didn't know that at that time when they were structuring and building these products,
Right. Right.
because they had the current dividend scales. Dividend scales were killing it. Everything was running along great. It's like, this will last forever. No.
Yep. Absolutely. The
So
times
now
will
you got
change.
a whole bunch of groups of people that now have these additional premiums to pay on their permanent insurance that was supposed to not have a premium increase. Or you see folks with, when you're talking about variable or universal life, because you got to know your products.
Yep.
And you have minimum premium, you have target premium, you got all these little things. So what do most people do? They pay minimum
You're
premium,
looking at that minimum. No, don't look at that minimum.
right?
Don't
So
don't
you
even
pay.
look at that minimum. Don't even think about that.
I know
But, but people,
you pay minimum premium because
right,
it's the
right,
least expensive.
yeah,
And as long as the interest rates were 10 and 12%, it was fine.
yep.
They're
However,
not that way anymore.
that's right. That's
So
right.
and the cost of insurance in those products was term insurance.
Yeah,
So it had an increasing cost on the insurance.
yep.
So with the interest rates dropping off, you then get the wonderful call that says your policy cannot support itself on the premium that you are now paying.
That's right.
Okay.
School.
But those are things that you didn't know when you were first, these products first came on the market because it was like, hey, these are great. And then until you find out, what are the non-forfeiture options on a variable product? None.
None. Right. Right.
So
There are none.
you can't do reduced paid up. Nope.
Nope.
Can't do extended term. Nope.
No, it's not a whole life policy.
So everything has its place. So there's a place for traditional whole life. There's a place for other kinds of products.
Right.
And then you now, after you go through all of that, then you're like a new products come on, like it's like, yeah, let's see how
Yeah.
long this lasts.
The variable, hey, in the 80s, this
Oh,
great.
you're
You
rocking
know?
and rolling. But see, you were now what you were doing though is you were putting an investment inside of your insurance.
Yeah.
And insurance is not an investment.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Hence indexing,
Yeah,
later
yeah.
on.
So it's a whole different kind of process, but everybody is going to have a spiel or something to say, well, this is how you do this, and that's all well and good.
Yeah.
But most people then started looking at the returns on their life insurance rather than what their life insurance was supposed to do for them and their family, and that it needed to be in place when they died,
Correct.
or it's
Correct.
not nothing's gonna happen.
Because eventually you're gonna be out of here and
Yeah,
you need
yeah,
something,
yeah.
you know.
We all gonna die.
So as you started making the transition, I know we've got off for a minute. It's just fascinating to hear you talk about this and speak to it. But when we go to DC and you
Yeah,
decide to set up comprehensive benefit services because you say, hey, listen, you're on that 6 to 9 clock, right? You
right,
kitchen table
right.
duty. You said, hey, I want to make that switch into businesses. Was that an easy transition for you to do? What was that like?
No, it wasn't because I didn't know the business at the time. So I had
Okay.
to learn it. I had to learn what health insurance was, group health insurance, not individual, group health
That's not a New
insurance.
York Life thing. So
No,
where?
oh well, you mentioned something earlier, and I meant to, and since you brought that back, so um, most of the major insurance companies back in the 70s and early 80s all had a health insurance division, a group health insurance division. Okay. New York Life had one, Prudential had, everybody had their health insurance because it was part of the what they did. And over time, it evolved out. They
Gotcha.
sold it off. Maybe it wasn't profitable, a variety of different things happening. So from having hundreds of health insurance companies throughout all these insurance companies, it started shrinking down. Okay. And so where today New York Life does not have a health insurance product,
Right.
Prudential does not have a health insurance product, Metropolitan is no more. They don't have, obviously don't have a health insurance product. So most of your big major life insurance companies don't offer health insurance now.
Yeah.
Okay. So it evolved and it changed. So at that time, I had to then learn what was group health insurance. What was at the time there wasn't HMOs. At this time, there's pretty much only PPOs and how they worked. And then your other ancillary business, group life, disability, how all that worked, and how that can be of benefit to a company who is hiring their employees, and then designing that. So that was a process which led to the RABC and the RHU
Yeah. Much different
designations. Right,
than just an individual life focus or estate planning focus.
right.
Even from the way you engage a client.
Mhm.
Was there another mentor? Like, was there how were you?
Unfortunately, not. No,
Wow. So you were just
I'm
saying, hey, I'm
probably
just
the
gonna learn.
mentor now. Because it's taken this long to get to where I am, and
Yeah.
there's so few of us. and who do this at a particular
Right.
level.
Because there
Okay.
weren't, right. I mean,
Because
that
now you
sounds
don't have the insurance companies who have the health insurance plans to offer for their agents. So the companies then went to securities and financial planning. So they now want you to have a Series 6 or a 7, 65s. You know, I think there's some other couple of licenses now.
which
But
makes
most
sense
of
to
your
me.
major recruiting life insurance companies do not have a health insurance division.
Right.
So the managers can't make any money.
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
Mm-hmm. Got you.
Because how do you, if you want to go into benefits, okay, but you're not going to learn it there.
Right.
So where are you going to learn it? How are you going to go through those things? And there are things like there's LUTC, Life Underwriter Training Council. There are all these other, organizations and things where you can get training on certain things. But this is pretty much learn it on the fly, on the job training. But you need somebody to open the door and to say, this is how you structure these kinds of things so
Yeah.
that you're able to, talk to people about, what's going to work in their benefit package. Rod, if
Absolutely.
you've got 15 employees and you're looking to keep these employees around here, what happens if your key person goes out sick, gets hit in the car, has a car accident, and can't work for 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
What you gonna do?
Hey,
And he or she's your main person,
so
and
hey,
and you don't have group disability insurance. You got a
oh,
problem.
you're gonna lose money.
Yeah.
By that time you
And this
might turn
person can't
down.
work. And then your other 14 people looking around and saying, well, what's Rod gonna do for Lee?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the golden egg, what's the chicken? What is it? The golden
Golden
egg, golden
goose.
chicken, golden goose. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
making everything happen. He was an
And he going
MVP.
out there, what gonna happen to me?
If I can, what, yeah, exactly.
Right.
I need to be somewhere where I can do, or I can't retire because I don't have a retirement plan.
Absolutely.
So those are the kinds of things. So then you have a different conversation with the business owner. You know, what is it that you want for your company?
Yeah.
It's not so much. It's not so much. I'm not selling. I'm solving issues. I'm solving problems. And I can help you find the problem that you don't know that you had.
Wow. You know what's really interesting about your story is that in each iteration, like in each kind of stage, you kind of start from zero.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even with you thought you were going to have an edge with your uncle, you
Right.
thought,
Right.
but you didn't. So you still
Correct.
had to start from zero.
Mm-hmm.
Even the relationship with Lang Dixon that came down the road. That
Right.
wasn't,
Right.
that came
Right.
in.
Didn't know that was even going to happen.
Right, right. That was
Because who would have planned him moving to Philly after my uncle died?
right.
Go figure that. From
Then
Wisconsin, he moved to Philly from Wisconsin. Okay, that's another story.
y'all can relate because he's from Wisconsin, you're from Oklahoma. You're like,
Right.
hey,
Yeah.
we have
Whole
there's
lot
some
of black people
similarities,
in both places, right?
similarities in the landscape there, a little bit. So
Said we had heat, he had cold.
right. So you got that. Then you say, okay, well, we moved to DC. All right, you build again, and then you say, hey, I'm going to reset into this benefit space
Right.
from the beginning as well. But
And not
then
having any
also
benefits clients, right?
also ascend there. How did you go about getting your first benefits client? Not coming from that background. What, did you just call, door knock? Like what were the methods that you
I
employed?
was I was I was going to not strip malls, but strips, and like the not malls, but
Shopping
the
centers.
yeah. Like a town center. I guess it
Okay.
wasn't a town center at that time because I don't even think they had evolved into town centers. But I was cold calling, just
Say,
walking in the
hey,
door. Yeah,
I help you
because
with your
those
benefits.
days you could do that.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was always quick on my feet because of the books. You know,
Yeah.
and just start talking. Just have
You know
a.
your
I mean, I
stuff.
have just start having conversation. Hi, John. My name is Lee Bethel. I'm with Comprehensive Benefit Services, and I'm a specialist in employee benefits. Do you have a benefits program for your employees?
Boom. Yeah, we got some. No, we don't. A lot of
Okay,
time,
and that
I would
basically yes
imagine
or
smaller
no,
businesses
you know,
probably didn't a lot
or
of times.
exactly, or I mean, you find the right question because you can. I notice that you all have some employees here. Do you all have a retirement plan? Or I mean, just you're just trying to get a little bit of an audience because this is day to day. Oh, and oh, by the way, do you know the owner of the business next door?
Right, right.
Oh, his
There you
name is
go.
John. Oh, okay.
Okay. You
Hey,
know.
John, I was just talking to Rod next
That's
door.
right, right. I told him I was gonna stop by and see you. You know.
And that was your day. Okay. So all you have to do is one of the things for health insurance is I may be able to find a way to reduce your costs and improve your benefits. Would that be okay?
Boom. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Grown. You've grown comprehensive benefit services from CBS from a small firm, just you, into I would say, would you say a mid-sized firm in the DC area, maybe larger?
Hmm.
How would you define it at this point? Because I want to talk about you transitioning and becoming part of Hub as a larger entity. How would you define CBS at the stage that it's at? Let's talk about right before you join Hub, right there when you're
Well,
right there.
see, you're down the road now 40 plus years.
I know, because I
Taking a
want to be able to
really
capture it
big
all. I just
jump.
know we're not going to capture the whole progression. So I see the first group.
So there's some things that you need to know.
Okay, okay.
Um, so
How
let's
do you get
see.
from there? How do you get from the shopping mall to, to here?
So one thing that I will say is that my practice is predominantly Black businesses.
Okay.
Okay. And when you're in that market, there's certain sizes that you're not going to see a lot of, like 1,000 life companies,
Mhm.
Black companies with 1,000 employees or more. You'll
Yeah,
find 100, 200 here and there. Most of them are going to be under 50, which most of our companies are under 50.
yeah.
So, in some respect, your growth is in line with the sizes of the companies that you are servicing. Okay.
Hmm.
And so while you may be extremely proficient at what you do, you don't have the access to the 3,000 life companies or the 4,000 life companies because they're not Black
Yeah.
in most cases. I mean, there are exceptions to the
It's a
rule,
real
but
statement. No, it's a real
generally
statement.
speaking, right.
Yeah.
It was like we've been talking about, my 401k business, and I'm like, so I know people who have billions under management in 401k because they have access to market. And they say, well, why don't you do that? And I says, okay, tell me how many Black companies you know that have $100 million in their 401k plan.
Hmm.
Crickets. And you know why? Because you have to be around a really, really long time with a whole lot of employees to
Yeah.
get 100 million in your 401k plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's just not that many Black companies that have done that, have been around that long, or they've been around that long, but they've only had 30 people.
Right.
So if you've got 30 people and maybe they're putting away 100K a year. Okay.
And that's aggressive sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
100K a year. It takes 10 years to get to a million.
You're right.
Okay. And you're
Yeah.
talking about 100 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I, so access to market sometimes ends up affecting your growth
Yeah.
because either that or you're dealing with so many smaller companies that you run yourself ragged.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you have those challenges. So it's just one of those things. Now, fortunately, we've crossed over to some extent and, have developed the practice into some other. So it's not, 100% Black companies, but still predominantly Black, probably 65, 70% Black. But that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah.
And it's just something that, I don't worry about it, compare about it, and, thinking that, oh, if I had this, I'd have this. And it's not about all that. So I realize that I'm able to do what I do. We're probably touching, I don't know, 5,000 people. Easy.
Listen, you've done all right. I think you've done pretty good. You know, so that taking that into consideration, I mean, did you find that transitioning into, I mean, and being in DC, I mean, you got not only the federal employees on the individual
Mhm.
side, but you have the contractors,
Mhm.
the companies that
And
run the
that's where
contractors.
I started a lot of the work, was working with the government contractors,
Yeah, yeah,
because
and
a
they
lot of
have
folks here would leave the government and start a company to do what they were doing with the federal government.
very successful
Right.
businesses.
8A program was here. All of those things were
Yeah,
rocking and
8A,
rolling
yep, yep,
right
killing,
down here. Exactly. And there
killing.
were very few of us who were black, who did benefits. So I was filling a
Yes.
void.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So did you ever have to kind of go the RFP route, or did you find that that was necessary for you, or was most of the growth organic?
So most of the growth was organic, primarily because when you read RFPs, they usually have some interesting language in there. Like,
Right.
let's say that this RFP is for a local municipality, and they have 500 employees.
Mhm.
Towns, the town, small town, whatever. They've got, well, not small, but 500 employees. And they'll have something in there like, oh, and please show us references of 3 other companies our size that you do business with. I might have one, maybe,
Right.
but it's the proverbial chicken before the egg.
Yeah.
How do you get to have 3 companies of 500 or 600 employees when you're doing with these RFPs?
Yeah.
And and most of your clientele is black. It's not going to happen. So you have to then realize, because I did minority certification, I did all of that, and then you realize, sometimes the RFP almost exclude you by the requirements of the sizes of the companies that they want you to be able to give as references,
Right.
because you don't have any way to meet that reference,
Right.
not on your own individually. Now,
Yeah.
if I team up with somebody, that's a little bit different, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the fact of the matter in this scenario that we're talking about. Is that's kind of how that happens, is that you just don't have that access to that group to meet that requirement, and that's one of the standards in the RFP.
Yeah.
That, yeah, and I go straight to what are the references. I don't even read the RFP anymore.
Right.
What are they looking for? How many companies, and what size is it? And can I meet it? And most of the time on my own, I could not.
But now you
So,
can compete with that. Now you can.
well, to some of that's another discussion that maybe we'll have in another podcast.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
We'll stay on this side right now with that.
Got you. Got you. Got you. Got you. Got you. Was so 45 years. I mean,
Yes.
we're not talking about uh, listen, your first of all, I'm 45 years old. Let me just say that.
Watch
Right.
it. That happens to me a lot. I used to be the youngest, and now
Right.
I'm not.
You said January,
Yeah, January 79, I started with
79.
New
I was
York
born
Life.
December of 78.
I
um,
know, I get
there's so
it.
much. I mean, there's so much in that story. It's like I wish we could take like a minute for each year, but there's just too much to encapsulate,
Right.
which is why I'm waiting on the biography that I know you're. Um, we haven't talked about you playing bass. We haven't talked about the music.
Yeah.
We're gonna have. I mean, we might have to just do a part two of this. I do want to know though. 45 years. Like, how do you stay motivated at this stage? Like,
The
what keeps
clients,
you
the
going?
clients, and I mean, so when you start in the personal insurance business,
Mhm.
they tell you you're never really in the business until you have your first death claim.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've had a lot of them. And I've seen things go well when people die, and I've seen things not go well when people die for planning or not. Either planning, fine, or lack of planning, it's not going to go so well.
Yeah.
And being able to assist individuals with providing for their families, and now creating generational wealth, because it's a little bit more than just paying funeral expenses and these types of things. And
Absolutely.
hopefully I'm not talking to somebody who comes up with the, I want them to miss me. No, this meeting's over.
Right.
Out.
That type of perception just needs to
Yeah, no,
be thrown
and
out the
it's
window.
still out there too. You know,
Yeah.
no, we're not, no,
Yeah.
I'm out. But to be able to do that, or to see a company go from having no retirement plan to having a 401k that maybe's got a couple $1 million in it, and they got some folks with 200,000 or 300,000 that they wouldn't have had if you hadn't been there to help them do it. Things
Yeah.
like that. Now, is 200,000 enough for them to retire? No, but it's more than not having anything,
Absolutely.
and it's going to be a lot of money to them.
Yeah.
And so, being able to see that take place, being able to know that these people, when they had their child and their child had to be in intensive care and they had the health insurance to pay for it, that's in place. We got a call today on one of our groups where an employee died over the weekend, and
Mm.
fortunately they had their group life insurance in place. So there are things that you realize that you're putting in place. And in many cases, especially with the group life, a lot of folks don't have individual insurance because there's just not enough of us going around doing what I used to do way back in the day. So
Yeah.
they don't have insurance. And, Rod, I tell people now, I go real hard. I'm sorry. I said, look, there's stray bullets, there's carjackings, there's all this stuff going on. So why don't you have any life insurance?
Listen, it,
I mean, seriously,
it's a valid
you know.
question, and there's no reason for GoFundMe's to be a thing
Oh, let's
for
don't
anybody
get me
to
started
raise
on
funds for
GoFundMe.
a
That's
funeral.
not an insurance program. Okay.
Not at all.
Not when you can buy term insurance for $20 a month and get a couple 100,000. It
Yeah.
makes no sense.
Yeah.
But somebody like me needs to be able to then say that, but say it in such a way that it causes them to act.
Yeah.
Because I'm not selling.
Yeah.
I'm a problem solver. First I'm gonna help you find your problem
Right.
because you don't know you have it, and
Yes,
then I'm gonna show you how to solve
how to
it.
solve it.
Oh,
There it
and by
is.
the way, yes, I can provide you with something that will solve your problem
Yeah.
that we have uncovered.
So what's the goal now? What is the big picture, for Lee Bethel? Like where, what's the legacy?
Interesting question. So right now I thoroughly enjoy what I do, and I'm going to continue to do what I do. I think I still have a lot to offer,
Mhm.
and I think that's evolving. Um, I think that's evolving. So I have no plans of retiring. I've seen what happens to people who go from being busy to nothing. That's
Yeah.
not a pretty picture, because they lose their edge. And I have to have purpose each and every day when I get up. Now, could I take a little less purpose? Probably, because my schedule is a little crazy. Sometimes I can't keep up with myself. Somebody said the other day, it's just like trying to schedule a meeting with you is like trying to see my doctor. I said, don't say that.
One
But
thing, three things at a
I
time.
was hoping never wanted to be that. Oh man, this is like 6 months down the road before we get an appointment with you. No, I don't want that. But so I think that um, finding a way to also increase the number of Blacks in our business
Mm,
is critical, because even though I've been doing this for 45 years, the needle has not moved measurably. So that the percentage of us doing what I'm doing is probably pretty similar, which is terrible
yeah.
when I started, because I have pictures of my uncle at meetings being the only Black. Okay.
Wow.
I can go places now and be the only Black. Okay.
Listen, benefits.
Okay.
Benefit.
And when you look at, you know, Black advisors and on the financial side of things, you start hearing things like 2, maybe 3%.
Yeah.
Okay. Today. And so who is servicing the masses? How are we going to close the wealth gap if you don't have enough people who look like us talking to people who look like us?
Wow.
We need
Wow.
more of us.
Yeah.
So the only place that that is going to start at this present point in time is at your HBCUs. So there's got to be programs put in place, and they're starting, and they have started, where you folks know that this is a career and not a job. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of business departments at colleges don't even know that financial services or being a financial advisor has some significant rewards and can be very lucrative at the same time. And you provide a means for the to close the wealth gap. So there are a lot of folks who are in business who could see this, and also being an entrepreneur and live and learning from hopefully others of us who can then impart some knowledge to them to say, here's how you develop your business. Here's how this is what you can do with it. And this is where you can be in 5 or 10 years. When my uncle talked to me about um, coming into the business with him, and I think I had mentioned earlier I wanted to be an orthodontist. Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
that means going to dental school and then going to orthodontic school after that. Similarly, going to medical school and then going into a specialty. Okay. So his words were, I will show you that you will be making more money than the orthodontist than you would be at the same point in time. If
Yeah.
you come in, if you're doing this. And I'm like,
Hmm.
And I always knew my uncle did well because he always drove a Cadillac. He had a pool at his house in the 60s. Okay. Wow. Entertain, vacation. It's going at the time you could do insurance conventions and all over the world.
Yes.
Not like it is now, you know. Um, so you could do all those things. And it was like, he must be doing all right.
Must be. Something might be happening here, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of basic intelligence, and it's like, So
Yeah.
those are the kinds of things. So I know this is a really long answer to your question, but that's kind of thing. So I think that there's got to be, somewhere down the line, some type of um, I don't know, mentoring or being able to provide, give back, say, here's how you can do, maybe try to inspire some others to be to get in more of us into this business in
Yeah.
all aspects. Because it's not just the insurance or the sales. I mean, there's claims, there's adjusting, there's actuarial, there's wholesalers, there's all these different avenues to be in the financial services business that are not just product oriented, or not just product oriented. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of other things that you can do, like Black wholesalers. Wholesalers can make a lot of money, you know
You know something
and yeah,
either.
but most people don't even know that you can be a wholesaler.
Don't you know it exists? You
Right.
don't listen. You don't know that benefits exist.
Exactly.
I did not know. Listen, I started in the benefits side. I started in worksite benefits, but I started
Mhm.
on the supplemental health side,
Right.
worksite supplemental health voluntary.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you could be a producer with a firm. I didn't even know the firms existed.
Right. I understand.
I didn't know that you could do major medical on a large scale.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know.
I
And I
understand.
would imagine that most people just don't know.
Right. And that's because now, as I mentioned earlier, most of the major companies don't have a health insurance division, so
Right.
the managers can't make any money.
Hmm.
They can get compensated on your securities business and your life, disability, annuities, and all of that, but not the health. That's got to go outside. And so they're not going to promote. It's just a system. It's not, I'm not making a value judgment on it. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
And, if the manager, if you're talking to your manager about avenues of way to make extra dollars, he or she is going to direct you to those dollars that will also allow them to receive overrides on those. And that's just nature. That's just
Right. That's
natural.
business.
Yeah.
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 That's business.
And it's not going to happen on the benefit side.
Yeah.
So because it's more of an independent kind of thing that you're doing. Now, United Healthcare, for example, is not a life insurance company. It's not doing individual products. They do individual health, but they're not doing individual life, individual disability. You can get all those group products. So you could do a contract with a United Healthcare, but your Mass Mutual manager is not going to make any money on that.
Right.
Generally speaking. Now they may have some little side agreement somewhere along the line. They get a little bit of something, if for that, but there are not a lot of companies that are doing that. I don't know of a lot of them. They're probably out there, but you're trying to now go into how you're going to do that. And then if you're getting competitive now, do you have a Blue Cross plan? Do you have a Aetna plan? Who are your providers that you have? Do you have local HMOs? So on. And I was speaking with somebody today that's out of Florida. So now I got to brush up on what's available in Florida, because I don't have a lot of clients in Florida now, but I got a referral to look at a company. I think it's a 10-person company in Florida, and they want to put in a benefits package. So I'm taking them from nothing to putting one in place and getting it up and running. At least that's the plan. We'll see how it goes.
Education first before you even start putting the plan together,
Right. You got to have a conversation about, so John, tell me about your company. What are you trying to do?
Yeah.
Well, I need to get some health insurance. I understand that. So what else is going on?
Exactly.
What are you doing for your retirement? Do you have disability insurance? If you can't work, what are you going to do?
That's right.
Oh.
Yeah. This is the importance of why you put these infrastructural components inside of your business.
This is why you have the life insurance and the disability insurance and the retirement plan, in addition to the medical. You wrap that around it.
Yep.
Because it's crucial. Because you're going to have hopefully not, but you may have an employee who dies. Okay. You could have an employee who's injured in a car accident. Okay. Or, gets carjacked or whatever. I mean, we gotta deal with the world we're living in today. So there's some basic kinds of things. It's kind of like having homeowners insurance.
Yeah.
Well,
I tell you,
it's never gonna happen. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let that tree fall on your house. Okay.
It's the intangible aspect of it. It's like it's like that it sounds like, yes, this is something that I need, but I think I'm gonna be okay. I think I'll be all right, right? It's that kind of thing. So tell me, as we start to wind down, for somebody who is new, who maybe they just entered the industry.
Yes.
Maybe they're struggling. Maybe they're having a hard time, as a newer person. Maybe they're considering it. They had a conversation with someone who suggested that they take a look at this business. What kind of words of wisdom would you share with them, or guidance would you share with them at an early point in their career or decision-making process?
Find a mentor. And do joint work. Half of something is better than 100% of nothing.
Listen, tell them you.
And those are the two things I think that will be vitally important.
Yes.
And in some cases, the mentor may not be with your company, and that's okay.
Right. That's okay. Yeah. Hey, listen, in the mentorship, you don't have to, it might not even be a joint. You might learn something just by referring and giving something to someone else so that they can teach you what it's supposed to look like.
Right. So, for example, I do 401k plans. Most Black advisors who are financial advisors do not do 401k plans. Okay. So that is a particular expertise, a particular field that I have developed. So, do I work with other advisors and share cases with them on 401k plans? And the answer is yes. So they are now in a way that they can also learn the 401k business by watching what I do.
Boom. Win-win.
So, so in some cases, I mean, if I have 3 or 4 people that I know who I've done a plan with, maybe 1 or 2, and now they're like, okay, when I have a situation to come up, I'm going to call Lee. So I might get 1 or 2 referrals a year, and that's fine. That flow, I'm not trying to write 100 cases.
But it makes sense. It
Yeah,
makes sense. Well,
yeah. You have
just
multiple sources. So if you're doing, um, let's see, what's a good example? So a unicycle. Okay,
mhm.
I'll go somewhere with this. Unicycle's got one wheel, right? And it's a little challenging trying to stay up on it, right? Go to 2-wheel cycle, it's a little easier to ride, isn't it? Then you got a 3-wheel cycle. So now you're getting all these different sources of stability
Yeah,
under what it is that you're trying to do. And you get to something now, and there are 4-wheel, you don't see many of these, but there are some bikes that are kind of 4 wheels. You don't see really 5. But if I were to take a chair and start talking, you start adding legs to that chair, it gets a lot more sturdier
yeah,
because it's got multiple, support. And if you're getting referrals from a center of influence, you're getting referrals from an HR person, you're getting referrals from another advisor, um, somebody, a minister or pastor, someone who's well known. You don't need 15 or 20 from each of them. You just need 2 or 3 a year.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, listen,
And you're developing that, and that in itself then starts the whole process of everything moving along, because if you are good at what you do, that's all that you won't lack for referrals.
absolutely. Listen, this conversation has been just very insightful, and you've dropped a bunch of gems kind of throughout, that I hope that folks are picking up as they go through the conversation. But I
Mhm.
will say this on those referrals, there may be 1 or 2 more coming. Um, if you could share your information and contact, because I know that there are some people that are going to listen and be like, you know what, I want to call Lee on some 401k.
Right,
So
right.
how do people get in contact with you? Yeah,
Okay, so you want me to just give it to you now? Okay,
yeah,
so
please.
my name is Lee Bethel. Duh. Our office phone number is area code 703-813-5551. And I'll say that again, area code 703-813-5551. Our company website is www.comprehensivebenefit, no S on benefit, comprehensivebenefit.com. And my email address is lee.bethel@hubinternational.com. So lee.bethel@hubinternational.com. And the website is www.comprehensivebenefit.com.
That's it. And
I'm
if you
on LinkedIn, and, well, I'm kind of active.
gonna have all your links and stuff in there. Listen, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see all that is in the description. If you're listening on one of the streaming platforms, Lee's website, contact, LinkedIn, all that's going to be there too, so that you can reach out, get plugged in. If your HR director need that 401k, you can.
There you go.
There you go. Hey, listen, I might have some cases I need to reach out to your
we
401k.
can we can do that. There it is. And that's what it's about.
Yeah,
As
right.
you learn more and you meet more people, you're
Yeah.
now able to then provide the expertise that you have, the knowledge that you have to others, and then they all can grow from it at the same time. So I think that that's very valuable importance, and that way we're pulling each other up rather than pulling down,
Listen, it's a real thing, and
because we got to reach back.
got to reach back.
Got
Got
to
to got
reach
to
back
reach
because
back.
there's just not enough of us.
It's not a
Yeah.
handout; it's a hand up.
There you go.
Is it? Um, Lee, I appreciate you so much. thank you, for coming on the platform and sharing your story. This one conversation, I know is not going to be enough. I know we're gonna have to do another one at some point in the future. So
Okay.
we're gonna we
This wasn't bad. This wasn't bad.
this wasn't bad, right? It was
I was
easy, right?
reluctant.
Right. Listen, I'm just
so
do I have the only recorded Lee Bethel interview?
Do you have the only recorded
Do
Lee
I have
Bethel
the
interview?
only recorded Lee Bethel interview? Not print, but
No.
okay,
No,
all
you
right.
do not. I have to
Well,
be
I got the
honest.
one. I got the one that was
So,
done in
because
the month of the
there are
45th year of business.
there's some. So yeah, I have some others.
Okay. But
Did you? I
but I
was
have
going to
the
ask
one.
you if you needed to if you wanted to see any of those.
Please,
Okay.
please.
Okay.
But I have the one that was recorded in January of 2024, which is
Yes.
celebrating the 45th
45th
year.
year. No one else has that
Has that one.
one.
So we have this one.
Yes, you do.
Right. And for those who are listening, like I said, man, you probably got to listen to this interview a couple times, to take notes and get everything from it. But I hope that you heard something that will allow you to grow, allow you to evolve, and allow you to know that there are no limitations for you. And maybe there's something that you heard in the conversation that makes you say to yourself that you should get a license.
How about that? Yes, because we need more of you in our
We need
business.
ya.
We need more. We need more. We need more. So you should get a license
Thank you, Lee.
and get a
Appreciate you.
mentor.
And a mentor. And a mentor. And some designations. And
Yes.
you
Yes.
gotta get educated.
So the more you earn, the more you learn, the more you can earn.
Boom. Perfect.
There you
Thank
go.
you, sir.
All righty. Rod, thank you so much. And thanks for being patient with me while I got it together to do
No,
this.
no, this is excellent. Appreciate you. All right.
Yeah, I don't, you get me, I'm okay once you get me going, but it's